All right. So we're finishing the 6.3 notes. The last thing we did was increasing and decreasing. And we're going to do, this is kind of the last thing that has to do with the graphs. We're going to do domain and range. These terms should not be brand new to you. We've done domain and range before. Domain is a list of all the x values. Good. But what's different now is we actually have like a polynomial that's a continual line. Whereas before, I just gave you a table, just a list of points. So when there's a continual line, there's no possible way to list every x value. Because not only do you have the whole numbers, but you have everything in between. So like 1.1, 1.01, 1.001, and so on. So you can't just list them all out. You could never do that. So we use intervals like we did with increasing and decreasing. But with domain and range, with domain, we look left to right. So the very far left of the graph and the very far right of the graph. If we see an arrow on the left side, we put negative infinity. If you see an arrow on the right side, you put infinity, positive infinity, but you don't need to put a plus sign. On every single example that we do in this unit, your domain is going to have negative infinity and positive infinity. That's just the way that these questions are that you'll see in here. So your domain will always be this. And you do your parenthesis left, it's your left x, comma, your right x, which both of those will be negative infinity and infinity. Your range is a list of all the y values. And these go bottom to top. And so we'll do parenthesis, bottom y, top y. If you have an arrow on the bottom, any guesses? Negative infinity. If you have an arrow on the top, positive infinity. Sometimes your domain, or your range, sorry.
David needs bullets. Report to the front office at this time. David needs bullets.
Sometimes your range will be negative infinity to positive infinity, but not always. So that's the one it could change. So let's look at number 3. And it's not starting at number 1, obviously, because we are continuing from this back page. So domain. We start with the parenthesis. Look at the left side of the graph. Is there an arrow on the far left?
Yes.
Yep, so we put negative infinity. What about the right? Is there an arrow?
Yes.
Yep, positive infinity. That will always be your domain. Your range. Look at the bottom. Is there an arrow on the bottom?
Yes.
Yep, so negative infinity. Is there an arrow on the top?
Yes.
Yep, positive infinity.
Let's see.
Let's look at number 4. Your domain. Is there an arrow on the left?
Yes.
Negative infinity. Is there an arrow on the right? Yep, so positive infinity. Turn your paper sideways and draw an 8. Is there an arrow on the bottom?
Yes.
Yep, negative infinity. Is there an arrow on the top?
No.
No. So look for the highest point on the top, which is this one right here. Well, look back at your range. What are you supposed to write for the range? The y value. So what's the y value? 1.3. Now here's one thing, I'm not going to be super picky about it, but in domain and range, if you have an actual number, you're actually supposed to put a square bracket. And what that means is that that point is included. It means 1.3 is actually a part of the range. There are several instances where you have to decide between a parenthesis and a bracket and whatnot. Don't stress too much about it. Your test is going to be multiple choice, and I'm not going to make you choose between an answer that has a parenthesis and a bracket there. But I'm going to do it the correct way, but don't stress too much about it in here. So when we're going to turn the page, we're going to start putting all of the things together that we've learned about the graphs of polynomials. So starting here with number 5, we're going to type this into our y equals. If you did not pick up your calculator, you need to go get it. Verify that what you have on your calculator looks like the graph that's already drawn here. We're going to start with the maximums and minimums. So what calculator button do I need to push to get that? Trace. And rounding to 1 decimal place is fine. So this first one is a minimum. It's the point negative 0.9. Now this negative 0.04, that really just rounds to 0. If you want to put negative 0.05, you can do that too. That's going to help if you actually put that over here. It makes it a lot easier when you're doing your increasing and decreasing. And then I'm going to arrow over to this maximum, which is the point 0.01. And then another minimum. (1.7) negative 4.2. Are there any questions about finding these max and mins? All right, the next thing is end behavior. This is where we look at the direction that the arrows are pointing. So on the left, is your arrow pointing up or down?
Up.
Up. So we say it rises to the left. What about the arrow to the right?
Right.
It rises to the right. Okay. And then we get to the increasing and decreasing intervals. So if we're going to start out, we start decreasing because when I trace that, I'm going down. And then I increase. and then I decrease, and then I increase. So down, up, down, up. So going back, I start out decreasing. Where do I actually start? Close. It's on the left.
Negative.
Yes. So even though it is pointing up, our increasing and decreasing is left to right, and left is always negative. So negative infinity, where does it stop? On increasing and decreasing, which do we look at x or y? We look at x, so it is negative 0.9. All right, now I'm still here at negative 0.9, and I increase until 0. Good. There's a little piece there. All right, now I'm still here at 0, and I decrease until I get to 1.7. And then here I am at 1.7, and I increase to infinity. Yep. So if you're writing it on the left side, it has to be negative. You start on the left, that's negative infinity. If you have the arrow on the right side, it's positive infinity. And then domain and range. So domain, we look at the far left, far right. Which, do we have arrows? Let's go back. All right, so far left, do we have arrows? Yes, so negative infinity. Far right, do I have an arrow? Yep, infinity. You'll always have an arrow on the left and right. What about the range? Do I have an arrow at the bottom? No. So we look at the very lowest point, which is this one. And range is based on what? The y value. So what is that y value?
Negative 4.2.
Negative 4.2. What about the top? Do I have arrows?
Yeah.
Yep, so infinity on the right. So from negative 4.2 to infinity. That is my range. And you have to put the negative 4.2 first. You always put the bottom first and then the top. And then for domain, it's always left and then right. Let's move on to number 6. X cubed plus 2x squared minus 4x minus 2. Yep, so the x value, negative 1.96, that would technically round the 9 up, which makes the whole thing go to negative 2. So that would be negative 2, and then 5.99 rounds to 6. So negative 2.6 is fine. And then we go to get the minimum. And this one is 0.6, negative 3.5. In behavior on the left side, falls to the left. Good. What about the right side? Rises to the right. Good. Questions so far? Increasing and decreasing. So it goes increase, decrease, increase. All right, so this first chunk, where does it start increasing? Negative infinity. So the far left, there's an arrow, and it increases. I'm stopping at x value, -2. -2. Increasing, decreasing, and domain are all x's. The only time that you do anything with the y's is the range. Now, once I'm up here at this point, I start decreasing. I'm still at -2. Where do I stop? 0.6. Good. And then I increase again. I'm still at 0.6 to infinity. Perfect. Domain, negative infinity to infinity. Oh, that one was wacky. What about the range? What do I have at the bottom? Arrow, so negative infinity. Do you have an arrow on the top? Yep, so it's to positive infinity. Any questions? All right. I'm going to do 2 more of these and then we'll be done.
What are we doing after we get on these?
Number 7. Let's go and get our maximums and minimums. So this first maximum is at -1.4. And then I've got -0.019, which really just rounds to 0. And then I go to this minimum, which is 0, -4. And then I have this other maximum, which is positive 1.40. Any questions? In behavior, falls to the left, falls to the right. Perfect. Increasing and decreasing. Increase, decrease, increase, decrease. Where does it start increasing? To what? -1.4. To -1.4. Perfect. There I am at -1.4. Where do I stop decreasing? 0. All right, so then I'm here at 0, and I increase till I get to 1.4. And there I am at 1.4. I decrease to infinity. Good. Any questions? Domain. What's on the left? Negative infinities on the left. What's on the right? Positive infinity. We got arrows on both sides, as always. The range. What's on the bottom? Arrow. So negative infinity. Do I have arrows on the top? No. So we have 2 points. Pick the highest one. Well, neither one of them's higher. They have the same y value. So what is the y value?
1.4.
Y value?
0.
0. Remember, range is y values. I want you to work on number 8 by yourself. Get all of the parts done and filled in. Don't just wait on me to write it up there. That doesn't help you. All right. These are the max and mins. Now you may have put 0, 0 on this one because when you hit trace, it probably had you on this point. However, if you did go left one click, 0.018 is actually a little bit higher. If you put 0, 0, no big deal. But this would probably be the point that was on your multiple choice, like if it was on the test. Got those. Any questions on max and mins? In behavior, falls, falls. Increasing, decreasing. Now you might have had 0 there. But check those. If you didn't get the same answer and you don't know what mistake you made, make sure you ask. And then domain and range. Remember, this is your y value. So we have arrows on the bottom. This is the highest point, so 6.3. Any questions?